Today is November the 9th, 2018. My name is Karen Neurohr. I'm a librarian at Oklahoma State University Library, and I'm in Marshall, Oklahoma, at the home of Rodney and Mary Huffer for an oral history interview today. And I want to start by saying thank you for letting me come into your home and interview you about yourselves and also about Miss Angie Debo. So let's start with hearing a little bit about yourselves. So Rodney, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I was born and raised around Marshall. My folks had a dairy farm here, and like I say, through high school until I finished high school and went to OSU. And following OSU, I joined the Peace Corps, went to Kenya, East Africa. I was there for 2 years, and then I extended a third year. And in that, Miss Angie's former student was a permanent secretary of the treasurer of the Kenya government, and he helped me get that approved. Following Kenya, I came home and I went back to farming, and still farm today.
Okay. And what were your parents' names?
Dawn and Evadine Huffer.
And do you have brothers and sisters?
I have 3 sisters, and Mary, Carol, and Susan.
Are you the oldest of
Yes,
the family?
I'm the oldest.
Okay. Okay, you mentioned that you came back to the family farm. So have you had family in this area a long time?
No, not really. Not since I've got uncles in Marshall, but
did your grandparents homestead in this area?
They both farmed around Marshall. Both my grandparents did, yes.
And you said that your family raised dairy cattle?
Yes.
Did you all raise other crops too to support the cattle?
Well, we also had wheat farming, but then we did have a lot of alfalfa and stuff planted for wheat for the cows. Yeah.
Okay. So what was it like growing up in Marshall?
Well, it's pretty steady. We had, for a long time, football and basketball was the 2 main things for a long time. It's surprising how Marshall has shrunk in population. There's not near as many people in Marshall as used to be. And the school finally diverted and joined another schools because there are just not enough students around Marshall. And Main Street is one of the widest concrete main streets in Oklahoma, but now there's almost no business except for the co-op. The co-op still has business there.
And your place here is at the highway crossroads, and across the way there is a convenience store and service station. Has it been there a long time?
Since I was in high school. I know Leo Draper's opened up the first filling station there. But at that time, there was a filling station about every 5 miles in any direction. I worked for him for a while when I was in high school, and then later, when I got in college, I drove a propane truck for him. So,
what kind of things, social activities, or did young people do for entertainment when you were growing up?
Mostly it was school-related stuff or church. Our churches all had student programs and stuff going on. And Miss Angie was involved in our church, and I know she taught some classes. I don't really remember her teaching my class too much, but she did teach some student classes, both Sunday church and then summer programs for kids. She was involved in that.
What is the church that you all belong to?
United Church of Christ, Marshall.
St. Paul's United Church of Christ.
Okay. And then you with being raised on a farm, did you have a lot of farm chores growing up?
Well, when I was in high school, I sold milk to Marshall and to different families, and I had a motor scooter and I delivered milk on the way to school. And then my folks sold milk to the big place in Enid for a long time.
So, how often would you make deliveries to different families? Was it every week or?
Yeah, every week. I rode that old scooter to schools after I was old enough to get out of the school bus, and so usually I'd take milk to school once or twice a week to different families on my way to school.
And as you became an adult in Marshall, were there any civic organizations or groups that you belonged to?
Not especially.
I think I read there was a Lions Club or.
Yeah, well, I never was in the Lions Club.
Okay. So you mentioned how Marshall has changed over the years and that people have left, and that was one of the reasons the school closed was because there weren't enough students. What was it that caused people to leave?
I don't know, because all the small towns around in this area have shrunk. Almost all the towns. I would say all the towns have gone down, and it seems like Oklahoma City and Tulsa have grown, but the small countries, towns have all shrinking down. And I know in this area there are at least 2 country towns. There's nothing left of them at all. There's no houses, no nothing over there. The older ones, but it's kind of strange.
What is it that Marshall has that has kept it going as long as it has? It's the grain elevator.
Yeah, the elevator. That's been a big part of it. And even that is changing because now most farms all have semis. Well, now they can haul the grain to Enid and save the storage, haul it to Marshall. Marshall Crescent, they still sell a lot of feed, and a lot of supplies like that. That they're still helping this somewhat, but the wheat market has just seemed to go down, and there are more people planting other things. Used to didn't plant any corn, but now you see some cornfields around. It's just a change.
What other crops are people growing around here? I saw some fields that had green plants that were maybe this big.
That's canola.
Canola.
They plant that. And sometimes Milo. They got different. They alternate the different food feed to change. Wheat's prices went down so much that they try and find something that to make profit.
And the milk project has also, because now there's not a dairy farm within 15 miles of Marshall. And there used to be a dairy farm every 4 or 5 miles. There was a dairy farm, and it's the big milk company in Enid has gone out. They're no longer there. It's just it's a change in the population.
Where do you drive to get groceries?
We drive to Crescent, which is 11 miles from here, or Hennessy. And then if we're in Stillwater or Enid, then we go to the bigger grocery stores in there.
And what about medical care? Where do you have to go for medical care?
Well, luckily we have a good doctor in Hennessy we go to, and then also in Perry, there's a clinic that we can go there.
Rodney, did very many people that you graduated with go to college?
I think I think everybody in my class did. It's just, well,
Mm-hmm.
it's the way it worked out.
Did your parents have a college education?
Nope, they didn't.
So you were the first in the family to
Yeah.
go? Mm-hmm. Did your sisters go?
Yeah, all three sisters did too.
Mm-hmm. When you were in college at OSU, what do you remember about that?
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I worked out the dairy farm there the first year during school, and that involved getting up extra early to go out and milk. And I always enjoyed the OSU football games and basketball games. It's just a big part of your class besides studying.
Do any professors stand out to you that you had? What was your major?
Agriculture.
Agriculture.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And but I can't name any of them now.
Okay. Okay, Mary, let's find out a little bit about you. And tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay. I was born in Uganda, East Africa, and during my high school days, I went to Kenya to go to school and stayed with my uncle, and I was going to this high school and called Naivasha High School, and I met Rodney through his houseboy. He had a young man that took care of his house. I took care of his house and did chores for him, and that was my senior year, and that's how we met and got married, and then moved to the States in 1971, and moved to Marshall, and they welcomed me. He had three sisters, so I gained three sisters when I came over here.
Mm-hmm.
And the church family was really, really good to us. So that made me feel at home, because when I moved over here, Uganda had been, the dictatorship, Idi Amin had taken it over. So I went 10 years without hearing from my family. I couldn't get any mail, couldn't get any letters. So this Marshall community became my family, and so that really helped a lot. And
What did your parents do when you were young?
my dad taught school, my mom stayed home.
So they sent you away to school because
To get they had better schools in Kenya.
Mm-hmm. So what was your early life like in Uganda?
In Uganda, I walked to school every day. We didn't have a vehicle, so everywhere I walked about 5 miles to school, and my dad had a farm, so he grew coffee and bananas, but most of the time, I didn't do a whole lot of farm work, but I helped when I could.
So how old were you when you left and moved to Kenya?
I was 17.
And all the kids walked to school. There was no transportation.
Yeah, they didn't have any school buses or anything like that. So you had to walk to school or just didn't get there.
Mm-hmm. How many siblings do you have?
Well, I had 3 sisters and a brother. When my brother has passed, and 2 of my sisters. So I have 2 sisters left over there.
And where are you in the family? Are you in oldest, youngest?
I was the next to the oldest.
Mm-hmm. What did young people do for entertainment when you were growing up?
There wasn't a whole lot to do, because they didn't have any movies or anything like that until I went to Kenya. Then things had started changing. You could go to the show and watch a movie American movie, they bring it to the theater, but most of the time you really want a whole lot of anything to do to entertain yourself.
Mm-hmm. Was church a part of your early life?
Yes. My parents were Catholics, so we went to Catholic school until after I got older. I just changed to, after I came to America, I decided it'd be easier to raise my kids in the church where we could go as a family. So I quit going to Catholic school, church, and so that's how I raised my kids through my husband's church, Rodney's church.
Mm-hmm. What were your first impressions of Marshall?
Well, my first impressions was it was small. It's and people, they were different, but yet they were good to me. So I was surprised how quiet everything was in Marshall, because after living in Nairobi, then you move to Marshall, Oklahoma is very different.
Mm-hmm. Rodney mentioned some ways that Marshall had changed over the years. So what would you add to that about how Marshall has changed over the years that you've seen?
Well, when we first moved here, we had a grocery store and a drug store and kind of like a dry goods store where you could go buy stuff like that. And then after a while, the drug store closed, the grocery store closed. So all we have left now is the post office, which is barely hanging on because they only open 3 hours a day. Mm-hmm. And the post, and then the co-op, and the co-op is even barely hanging on because now they joined with other towns. It's not just Marshall. There's Marshall and Douglas and Wacomas. They consolidated with the other two towns to keep it going.
What can you tell me about the Marshall Library?
The Marshall Library?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when our kids were going to school, we really we ran a dairy, so we were so busy that we really didn't use it a whole lot. Mm-hmm. And so until they moved it to the school, that's when after the boys had graduated and moved on is when we didn't use it a whole lot.
Mm-hmm. How many dairy cattle did you all used to run?
We had about 100 cows.
That's a lot of work, isn't it?
Yes, that kept us very busy. So we didn't do a whole lot.
Did you have horses?
Yeah, we had one horse that we rode after the cows because we went to the. They would go all the way to east of the farm to eat grass. So whenever it's time to milk, somebody had to go get him. So you get on a horse and go and bring him up to be milked.
Did you raise any other animals, or food, or gardening, or?
No, mostly we raised replacement heifers. Mm-hmm. So I bottle fed all the babies. So at one time I could have as many as 50 baby calves. Oh. So that kept me busy.
Yes, that would.
At least one time we had a hog when I was in FFA, and I had a show hog. But that was kind of unusual.
No sheep?
No, we didn't have sheep.
No. What about chickens?
No, we didn't have any chickens or hogs after we got the dairy because health department kind of frowned on having other animals, especially close to the dairy. Dairy, you have to have everything. We sold grade A dairy milk, so you have to be, clean and no other animals around. Mm-hmm. So we didn't have any chickens.
We had some once to butcher chickens.
Not here. Well, that was not here.
Not here, but
Yeah.
on our farm.
Was your house here when you were first married?
No, we rented several different farms and we lived out in
His
both
parents lived in the old farmhouse. This is a fairly new house we had built and moved here in 2010. So, but the old farmhouse was west of this house, and that's where he was born and raised. And when he first got born, that's what they lived in, the old farmhouse, until we moved this in 8 years ago.
Okay, I'm going to move into some questions about Miss Angie. So Rodney, I'll start with you. What are your earliest memories of Miss Angie?
Well, especially she belonged to our church, and so we would. Sometimes she would teach different classes, and then we also had each summer we'd have a church picnic out in somebody's farm, and she was always involved in that. And she was also really interested in everybody's classes in school. She was kept up to date with everything, what we were all doing and everything.
So would you say that she liked young people?
Yeah, she was very interested in what everybody was doing, especially in the classes.
Do you remember her ever teaching or speaking to any of the classes or visiting the school? Anything like that?
No. I think there were some teachers would have her come and give a class or give some talk on certain history things. I do remember her doing that sometimes, but not often.
Okay. Mary, what are your first memories of Miss Angie?
Well, when my first memories was she welcomed me with open arms when we came back to Marshall. She's one of the people that really was interested in Rodney and I, and welcomed us in church family, and always was there for us. And and then later on, I started mowing her lawn for her, so I would go by and visit with her. So she was a really good friend. I mean, just like I can say a good friend, because she's really cared. Sounds like she really cared about me and cared about our family, what's going on. She always spoke to us, and so I really loved her.
No, at one point when, as she became a little bit older, she was able to travel, and I believe she visited Africa before. Was that after you came here, or?
That was before.
It was before. Okay. Did she ever talk to you about her international travels and places she went?
Yes, she did, because I think at one time she even went to Uganda and got sick and had a nurse lady take care of her, and then she stayed in touch with her after all those years, and she got where she, after the Idi Amin regime and the lady lost her husband, she started supporting her and sending her money so that lady could send her kids to school. So she kept in touch with that lady, and she always talked to me about that, how she helped her out through, all those years. So yeah, then she told us one time that she went to Egypt and rode a camel, and showed us some pictures, and so she did a lot of traveling.
So what was it like to mow her yard for her? Was she particular
She
about
was
how it was done?
she was very particular, so you had to make sure you did it right.
What would she be particular about?
Well, make sure the grass didn't get on the sidewalk after, when you mowed, and weed eat. You have to make weed eat and make it neat, which I would anyway. But make sure she always mentioned it to you before you started.
Mm-hmm. And did she have flowers growing around her
Yeah,
yard?
she had some flowers, some roses, and she always had a glass of water waiting.
When you finished?
When you finished,
Mm-hmm.
make sure she always kept make sure you didn't get too hot.
Mm-hmm. Did she pay you for mowing?
Yeah, she paid me.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember what she paid?
Oh, I gotta remember. I think it might have been $10 every time I mowed.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a very big yard, so.
Mm-hmm. Rodney, did you ever do any work or chores for Miss Angie?
No, not that I remember. No.
Okay.
Well, only thing I do remember was I become president of the board of the church, and there for a time she got elderly and wasn't coming to church, and we took communion. Me and the minister, we took communion out to her. That's the only thing I especially remember.
Mm-hmm. Would she want you to stay and visit when you did that?
Oh, maybe a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what can you tell me about her political views, if anything? Either of you, if you can think of anything.
I can't really remember anything specific.
Okay.
I think she was a Democrat, diehard Democrat. I remember that because Ronnie's folks, they were Republicans, but she didn't argue with them on anything about that. But I know that she was a Democrat. I remember that.
Mm-hmm. I've heard that she was interested in helping other, particularly Native American peoples in Arizona and Alaska, and that she would encourage people to write letters that had to do with the Indian people's rights. Do you have any information about that?
I think at one time she mentioned in church, she's talked about if anybody was interested, we could write letters, but I never did.
Mm-hmm. Okay, in the 1980s, there was an artist, Charles Banks Wilson, who painted a portrait of her that was hung at the Capitol in Oklahoma City. What do you all remember about that?
I remember going down and looking at it one time.
Well, what I remember is our church, our family church. When we found out when it was going to happen, we all loaded up in vehicles and we all went down for it. Somebody called it for hanging.
Her hanging.
Yeah, but we went and sat in there and watched it get hung, and so that was interesting. That was a really honor to be involved with that.
Was there a big crowd?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of people. I think probably most people that could drive down there from the church went, like the Reams, the Brysons, and we all loaded up and some carpooled, and we made it down there for her.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like it was a fun event.
Oh, it's a fun event that none of us would ever forget, because now every time you go, or when they show on TV, and I think she was the first woman
mm-hmm.
to be hung in there. So it's a good feeling.
Mm-hmm. Notice that the highways here are the Angie Debo Memorial Highways.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about how that happened, that they had that designation or name.
Well, I think because she was from around here, they tried to name highway portions to somebody, and since she was close to Marshall, I think that's why they decided to name it for her, because everybody knows she came from Marshall, and we're proud to have it
Mm-hmm.
close to. We're proud of it.
Her last award was given to her by Governor Bellman, and it was at, I believe, at Raymond Bryson's home. Do you
Yeah,
remember anything about that?
I don't think we went, but Rodney's folks did. I remember him talking about it.
Were they good friends of Miss Angie's?
Yes. And she got involved with these foreign students coming to OSU. And a lot of times we'd have different foreign students come out and stay for a week or so at different times. And some of them I know by the time I made OSU, they were still there and they knew me well.
Mm-hmm. So would that be during holidays when the campus wasn't having classes? So she would find places for them to come and stay
Thanks.
Yeah,
around
I think-
Marshall?
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I'd say we'll come over and stay, and so they wouldn't be so home. It wouldn't be lonely,
Mhm.
when everybody was gone and they didn't have any family. So she cared a lot about people that she watched out for them,
Mhm.
especially foreign students, international students.
Did you meet any of them before?
That whenever they were doing that, I wasn't here yet
Mhm.
then. And I don't think after we came home, we didn't get any more come over after we came home.
Mm-hmm. She would have been getting a little older then.
Yeah. But I know there was at least 2 or 3 came over and they kept in touch with Ronnie's family before I came.
Mhm. Rodney, what was it? How did you hear about the Peace Corps and joining the Peace Corps?
When I was at OSU, they came out with a thing trying to get people to join up.
Mm-hmm. What was it that attracted you to go and do that service?
Well, one thing I avoided being drafted at that
Mhm.
time. I was number 13 on the list, and during the Peace Corps service, where you were exempt from the being drafted.
Mm-hmm. For the Vietnam War
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what projects were you involved with during your service in the Peace Corps?
Well, I was I had got a degree in agriculture from OSU, and so my experience here on the farm, and so I got involved in improving farming position around Nairobi, especially. I worked with farmers. That was I was officer for a district in agriculture, and I worked with I worked with one other major guy that also he was in farming, and that was our job. Then that was daytime job, and then evenings. Why I lived on a farm, and I ended up they put me in charge of that farm, and had a good time too. There was one thing. Kenya at that time had a dry season, and when cattle would die, just being so hungry, our grass. So I taught people how to make silage, and and the last I heard from them, they're still making silage, but it just worked out real good. Yeah.
What was the most challenging thing about your Peace Corps experience?
Learning Swahili.
Oh.
Yeah.
At that time, there was, I think, 50, 60 guys got in this thing, Peace Corps. In the end, I think there was only 20 of us was able to learn the Swahili.
Oh. So did you start learning it before you went?
No.
Or after you got
after
there?
I got there.
Well, he did try to learn it here, but they also sent him to South Carolina
Yeah, that's right.
to live with black family, so he can see how well he could adjust because some people couldn't handle it, and he went over there and lived with a poor black family over there, and he did good enough that they sent him on to Africa, and he got along with the rest. When he got over there, he got along with all the other Africans too, because everybody really liked him. To this day, they still, we still, some got a friend that the one he worked with even named his son after him.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's very nice. Have you been back to Africa?
No.
I went to Uganda after being here 10 years after the regime, Idi Amin was overthrown, but it wasn't safe to go back as a family, so we didn't get to go back altogether.
Okay, do you remember when they were making the film about Miss Angie, the Indians Outlaws, and Angie Debo? I think they were coming and doing interviews with her, and they made the film. Do you remember anything about that? Hearing about that?
Well, we were busy. I don't remember. I remember his aunt was interviewed, but we never did get involved with it, so I don't remember much about it.
What was the aunt's name that was interviewed?
Bonnie Dietrich.
Okay.
What was her tribe?
She was Otta, Missouri Indian, and she lives in Marshall. And she married his uncle, so at one time I think they interviewed her.
Okay. Do you remember watching the film on television when it came out?
Yes, I think we watched it. We didn't do it. We did it as a family, but we didn't go when it was premiered. We didn't go watch it with everybody.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's talk about Prairie City a little bit. The book Prairie City, and it's based in many ways on the history of Marshall. So are there incidents in the book that you remember hearing stories about growing up? Any family stories or anything?
Not especially. I know she talked about people going everywhere on horses, horse wagons and buggies, but specifics I can't.
Okay.
I remember hearing stories. Actually, it was like Ronnie's parents talking about 3 miles north where the man killed his whole family, but one girl got away and escaped. And I remember them talking about that.
Oh.
But
that was a sad chapter in that book.
Yeah, no, that's why I just probably could never get myself to read it. But yeah, I remember hearing about that.
Marshall has 2 cemeteries, the South and the North Cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know if that family is buried, the ones that passed away are in one of those cemeteries?
I really don't know. Nobody ever did say anything other than that the man killed his whole family except that girl that ran away and escaped.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure if they're buried the North one or the South one. I couldn't tell you.
Which cemetery are your family members
buried
in? The South one.
Well, his parents are buried at the South Cemetery, and his grandparents on his dad's side are buried at the North one. So both of them.
Okay. Does anything in particular stand out to you about the book Prairie City?
Well, what stands out about it is when, after they started the parade, they used to honor Miss Angie, but it was started before I came home. But then after we came home, they had the parade and
a rodeo
and then the parade would be on a Saturday. There would be Marshall would have all the people that have moved away, they would come back to Marshall, and the town would be full of people, and it was just wonderful to have everybody come back, and then it finally got where it just finally quit having it.
Did your sons ever participate in the parade?
Yes. I can't remember, but one time the Sunday Oklahoman came over and took a picture of him, and Chris was pulling at him in a wagon going through it. And Rodney, one year, he grew a beard, won first prize for having the best beard. So yeah, everybody tried to participate in it. His sisters rode horses in it.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the Susan, she was a queen one year.
Oh.
His youngest sister.
Mm-hmm.
She was a Presidio queen.
Huh.
So yeah, everybody got involved in it.
Would people dress up to be in the parade?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They wear the old clothing, like back.
Even did come watch the parade. A lot of people.
Yeah, some people did dress up.
Cowboy hats.
Mm-hmm. So it was a rodeo and a parade, and what other kind of activities were going on?
Well, the rodeo would be like that Friday, and then Saturday with the parade, and then that Saturday morning before the parade started, Miss Angie would take a bus and take people around, show them where the old schools were. But because we used to run a dairy,
milking
the cattle, we'd try to get it done so we can get in town before the activity started. We never need to make it to that
tour.
To the tour,
Mm-hmm.
and he really feels bad about not making it, because now we don't know where she took them.
Well, we have some. We're working on a project at OSU to do a mapping project of the tour sites.
That'd be wonderful.
Janet Murphy had some cards that for each of the sites that Angie had typed up, and for what she would say about the cards. And a lot of the things on the cards that you see are things that are in the book Prairie City too. So that's something that we're working on. We've gone out a couple of times to take pictures. Of course, nothing looks the same now, but it's been interesting, and we hope to have that up in the springtime sometime. I'll let everyone know.
I told you about going by her parents' old farm out there, finding those buggy wheels,
Mm-hmm.
and I've went around at least one other country school location, and I didn't find anything except horseshoes.
Oh.
But my neighbor, he went on one. He found 3 real old pennies.
Oh.
I forgot how old they were, but they were real old pennies.
Mm-hmm.
But that's interesting thing to look for around old school. You never know what a kid might lose a penny, old schoolhouse.
There are no buildings left at all for those old schoolhouse sites. Are there?
Well, there's one right down here. It's a rock schoolhouse. Stone.
It's still there.
Oh,
It's
is
still
it?
there.
Which school was that?
I can't remember what the name of school that was. It's I don't remember the name of it, but that's the only place that you can tell there was a school, and it's still
Well,
standing.
that's not the only one. There was one down here. This little town right down here.
Level.
There's one still standing there, and there was another one over here. But the people bought that farm. They put out notice that we're going to tear it down. It was a rock schoolhouse, and nobody objected, so they tore it down, took it down, and put it in their new home.
They used the rock.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You were telling me about the dugouts.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that a little bit more. I would like to hear about the dugouts that you see on the old farms.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to think about people would live in a dugout in the dirt, in especially during the wintertime. And you'd have to cut all the wood by hand with an axe to get wood to heat and to cook off of. And and nearly every one of them I found, you can find the old well, hand dug well, and most of them are also lined with rock down as far as you can see them.
Mm.
And you always think, boy, that was a lot of work. Of course, they had no TVs, no radios, and no electricity, and to do all that work, and it's just that was a lot of work, and even digging a dugout in the summertime when it was hot to make a place to stay for the winter time was a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
That just is a lot of work, and then and living on horses and driving a horse to team to town to get food or whatever, and when grocery supplies. That was slow going. I've driven my team to Marshall 5 miles, and that takes 3-4 hours. It's just slow going and that far by doing everything by teamwork. It was tough going and digging, but that's I rent some more farms and all these farms I found the dugout except one of them. This one, there's no well there either. It's kind of interesting, and I just don't know what happened. But I think Miss Angie's folks didn't get it on the run, but they came after the run. And I think that happened to quite a few of the farms that people got the run, got it on the run, and then they turned around and sold them. And so you don't know how all that worked out. But I can see digging that dugout by hand was work.
If I were to go out on some land and start looking for a dugout, what would be the clues that would help me find one if there was one there?
Usually the water well. Most of the time, most of them will have a water well real close by. And like the one Miss Angie's folks had, it was right next to the creek. Now there was a well up there, and most of those old water wells put a windmill up eventually. They didn't have no electricity to pump water. So that gives you an idea of the place it was and the work they did.
And I took a picture of the hoops that you showed me. Yeah, when you came. So tell me a little bit. Those were for a buggy?
Yes.
So tell me a little bit more about going out and finding those and how that worked.
Well, I didn't know Miss Angie's folks come from that farm till one of these studies things, and so I talked to the people that own it now. Didn't know about it either. They didn't know about it, and so I asked them permission to go over and look for it. And yeah, they found it, and I found it. So then I went back and with a metal detector, and I found these. There's several other pieces of stuff in there that wore out, rusted out. I did find an old milk jug, what's left of a milk jug there, and like I say, it was a steel tub that was broken, but and most of these old dugouts I go around, I find horseshoes. Metal detector, you'll pick up a horseshoe. And I have found one mule shoe. That's kind of unusual.
So how did you figure out about where the house was that Angie's family had on that road?
I remember the house.
Oh, you remember the house.
There was a wooden house there next, pretty nice old house, but yeah, it was close to the highway.
Okay. Did you remember the house?
Well, I think by the time I came home, by the time we came home, nobody was living there anymore, so I really didn't pay much attention to it until after we started the Miss Angie. We had those stories in town, and then he remembers it because he was back then. He remembers where it was at, but I never did see the old house.
Okay. The house that she, when she lived in town, and that her parents lived in, and that she lived in, you both had chances to go in there probably over the years. So
Yes.
tell me what you remember about that house and the way she lived.
Well, she always had her chair. And whenever I went in, she's always either sitting in her chair. When we started mowing her lawn, most of the time whenever I went in, she would be sitting down. And but it just kind of cozy. It was just a nice, cozy home.
Seemed like one wall was completely lined with books.
Yeah.
I remember that part.
Mm-hmm.
And everything was old in her kitchen. She didn't have too much modern stuff.
Mm-hmm. I'd heard that for a while, when someone in the Marshall community would get married, that her wedding gift would be a recipe box with hand-typed recipe cards. Did she ever give you anything like that?
I think we got one with her recipe for the tea. We got a tea recipe from her.
A tea recipe?
Mm-hmm. With tang, and it's for that's something she always, if you went over there, if you didn't drink coffee, that's what she always offered you.
Oh, and it was a hot drink?
Yeah, hot drink.
Mm-hmm.
I still have it somewhere.
Mm-hmm. I think I remember that tea from back in the 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was her famous
in the 80s.
recipe.
Mm-hmm. When you were getting ready to come back from the Peace Corps with Mary, your father went these are some things that she talked about in her diary a little bit. Your father went and spoke with Angie, and consulted with her, and wanted her to know that you all were coming back. Why do you think that she was the person that he went and talked with?
Actually, she would come out here to their farm and visit with them quite often, also, and so they got to be pretty good friends. I don't know if he had any specific reasons. Well, I know I was due to come home in 2 years, and I wanted to extend a third year, and he told her about it, and then she let this secretary of the treasurer know about it, and he worked on it too, in case I needed help. But I did. It worked out. I didn't meet him, but I never met him. But I got that letter from him anyway.
Mm-hmm. And so, were you married in Africa?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Was your family there, Mary?
Ugo met a justice of the peace in Nairobi.
In Nairobi.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mary, you mentioned a few times how you felt welcome in the community, and Angie was a part of that.
Yes, she was. She always spoke to me, and most of all the ladies from that church made well. She's she was one of the hostesses at the shower.
Mm-hmm.
With the shower, and then whenever I came, she made sure she spoke to me, and being friends with Rodney's folks too, that helped a lot. But everybody in that church were good. They were all good to me.
Mm-hmm. What was the shower like that the church had?
It was different because I've never experienced anything like that. But his sisters and his mom and all them, we all went down there, and he even came. Back then, the guys could come, so they gave us a lot of nice gifts that some of them I'm still to this day I still use.
Mm-hmm.
So they were real nice. We had it in our church basement. They made cookies. And I remember Miss Angie made some cookies and brought. Yeah, she was good. She always made sure she contributed to whatever was going on in the church, family nights or anything like that. She made something and brought it.
It sounds like the church was a big part of her life.
Yes, it was, and for us too, because I mean, it was a really, our church is one of those places that you feel at home, and to this day, we don't have very many people left, but we still go because it's family church, and that church was part of her life too because she didn't have anybody else either.
Where does the minister come from for your church services?
Well, since our church downsized, we don't have as many people. We share ministers with the two other churches. So one of them lives in Tulsa, teaches at ORU, and then the other one lives in Perry, and they alternate.
Oh.
So they come from Perry comes, and then they'll go to Enid, and then there is another church in Perry. So there are three churches we share same ministers because we all can't afford to have one minister.
So two churches in Perry and the one here?
No, there's one in Perry and one in Enid.
Oh, one in Perry, one in Enid, and the one here.
Yeah.
So the minister goes to all three.
To all three.
How does that work? What time do they come here?
At 9:15, it was we were the first ones. And then after he gets done, he goes to Enid. And then the one that didn't come here goes to that one church. So they alternate. So it's worked out good for us because otherwise probably wouldn't be able to keep a church going.
Another one of the diary entries mentioned that you went to the Marshall Women's Club with your mother-in-law.
Yeah.
Right after you came.
Yeah, Miss Angie and some of the ladies invited me to join. So I joined, and my mother ended up dropping out, but I went for quite a while. I really enjoyed it because I learned a lot. Because like when I came over here, everything was new to me. So I learned I belonged to two of them. There was Extension Club and then the Marshall Women's Club. So I joined both of them so I can learn. And I did learn a lot of things.
What kind of things did you learn?
Well, how to cook, and the Marshall Women's Club a lot of history. So that helped me a lot because I didn't know a lot of American history, and then there was, I learned a lot of that.
Did you speak English before you came here?
Yeah, English. Uganda was colonized by the British, so my English was really, British English. So when I came, there's a lot of American slangs I didn't know, and so a lot of the things I learned from Marshall Women's Club was, how to speak good English. If you, my son don't think so, but it's still I learned a lot from them.
So you grew up speaking two languages?
Yeah, my dad spoke English, so I knew a little bit of English before I went to school. And then when I went to school, I learned English. And then, of course, I had my native tongue, which is one of them. And then my mom was another tribe, so I knew some of hers. And then Swahili was a general. Everybody, if you went over there, you had to speak Swahili to communicate. It was a lot of people didn't speak English.
What was it like for your sons to grow up in Marshall? Were they helping with the farm and the chores and?
Yeah, they helped with the farm and the chores. But they also had they showed dairy cattle in the summer in Stillwater. That's where the dairy show was. But they also our church had a good youth group, and they were leaders for it. I mean, they would go to church camp, and they would go to different churches, sister churches, and have meetings. And so that kept them busy. And then they also did sports in high school. football
they
and
both
basketball.
go to school in Marshall?
Well, they went to school until the school closed. Then they went to finished up in Covington and graduate from Covington and Douglas schools.
What was it like when the school closed here?
It was a sad day because we knew, Adam was the last graduating 8th grade class here. And it was, once they left, they closed the school, everybody was sad because, that means the town just wasn't the same anymore.
I was on the school board for a while, and for a while we had certain classes met in Marshall, and then some of them in Covington, and that went on for quite a while. But then finally, Marshall just shrunk down so much they just finally transferred all of it to Covington.
Are there still young people in and around Marshall?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a school bus still comes through town, and there's one of the school bus drivers lives in town right now.
But it went from when we first came home, it was pretty close, between 350 to 400 people back then. But now, I imagine probably we're under probably 200 and some. And so the young, there's very few young people that live here because like all the kids that went away to college, most of them didn't come back because they couldn't afford to farm. So they stayed away, got degrees in different fields and they stayed away.
And both of your sons went to college?
One to OU and the other to OSU.
Oh.
Yeah.
Chris was into the weather, and that was at OU.
So he went down there and graduated from down there and worked for the weather center. He still does through the weather department in Norman. And Adam, he went to OSU and graduated, and then he worked for the university for 10 years. And then after a while, he just changed jobs, and now he works for an oil company. So both went to college, and they didn't come back to farm, to dairy. And in fact, after they left to go to college, we had said to dairy because we didn't have enough help to keep it going, and the milk prices got so low that you just couldn't keep it running, so we just sold out and bought beef cows.
Did you have other jobs over the years, Mary?
Well, I worked until after we ran the dairy. After we sold the dairy, I went to Enid and worked for the food company, and in Enid until he got hurt in 2010. Then I moved back. I stayed home and kind of help him recuperate and get better. And then my neighbor hired me to work at his shop. Quick Trip across the road, and that's why I'm still there. Work part time,
So that's convenient. It's so close.
Very convenient and very, it's very good because when he first got hurt, after we came home, I was working for him. But if he needed me, I didn't have any problem. They just let me come home, and if I needed to take him to the doctor, so that worked out really good, and it still works pretty good because I don't even have to buy gas to go to work. I just walk across the highway, and so they've been good to me.
You mentioned that you still have some wedding gifts that you received that you still use. What comes to your mind?
Oh, I got a cast iron skillet, a waffle iron, and that recipe box you talked about. And those are the most things that I still use it almost every chance I get. But I'm sure there's some other things that around, but those are the most things. My cast iron skillet is seasoned well.
So the recipe box that you have, do you remember if that came from Miss Angie?
I think it did. It's a little green recipe box with different recipe, blank recipes in it with that one that
The one that she
she
had typed.
typed out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned when we were talking about an event that you went to in Stillwater yesterday, and then it's something that you go to regularly when they have it, some kind of a global event. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Okay. Well, the horticultural department in Stillwater has different shows classes every year, but the one in November is the one they call it international. It's an international one because all the professors, most of them go overseas to help, especially third world countries, to help them. They will go and drill wells. They'll go over there and teach them how to plant. They've developed a planter. It's OSU that they take over to like Peru and somewhere Africa and show them how to use them, because before they were planting seeds by hand. But this plant is wonderful because you just put the seed in it and you just use it as, you don't have to bend over or anything like that. So, but that's why I usually go to that class, because I really enjoy going since I love plants, and they also talk about different places where they go to help improve the community, the different countries.
Mm-hmm.
So I went yesterday and it was a real good time. I had a good time.
How long did it last?
It went from 8:30 to 5.
Oh.
So it's an all day. They have different speakers.
Mm-hmm.
From some are professors and some are just people like the world, from the world, what's the name of that company? They go to different countries and help them. So they bring them up here and they speak to us about it. And so it was a real good day.
Mm-hmm. And so they have other things during the year that you go to as well?
Yes, horticulture. They have people from their own greenhouses. Mm-hmm. They come up and talk to you about plants and, what kind of plants that grow good in Oklahoma and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But this one here is a global, international, because all the people that spoke have been everywhere, like Peru, Africa, Egypt, Ethiopia. They go and do things. Usually it has the horticulture department, mm-hmm. but the different groups go over there and teach people how to grow things and how to make. Like there's one group now is going into Uganda, and they're trying to teach the communities how to grow food to eat and then have some to sell to make a living at it. So that's kind of, that's why I go, because that's interests me. Mm-hmm. So that's why I usually go.
How do you hear about these programs?
Well, since I'm a member, since I've been going, they send me mail or whatever.
Mm-hmm. What do you like to grow?
Well, I hate to say it, but I like plants better than I do I go to garden. I do gardening stuff, but I enjoy my plants.
Your flowers?
Yeah, my flowers. Mm-hmm. Flowers. Yeah.
What is your favorite flower?
I like tropicals. I like hibiscus. Mm-hmm. Anything that blooms, but I like all kinds of plants.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a greenhouse?
No, well, yeah, we got a small one. Rodney made me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll put stuff in there for the winter, and then I'll bring some in the house. This is the first time. Last year I grew my first pineapple. See that plant sitting there over by that was a plant. I started it from after I ate the pineapple. I started from the head.
Yes. Oh my.
And took it 3 years. I finally got a pineapple on it, and we ate it this summer.
You did? Was it good?
It was good because I left it on the plant until it was ripe.
Uh-huh.
And it was really good. So I enjoy gardening.
How long did it take to grow that pineapple?
Well, it took it 3 years
Oh, my
because
goodness.
you bring it in in the winter and it goes dormant. So you take it outside and it isn't enough days to get it. It takes that long, I guess, to mature. But if it was in the tropics, imagine 6 months. It'd been because it's all year round, you know. But it was worth it.
Are you going to grow another one?
Well, I don't know if I don't know if I will or not, but I'm going to try. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have cultural traditions that you grew up with that you continue to keep?
Well, not cultural traditions, but the foods. I still make my native food, and we eat. I eat it, and Ronnie eats some of it. My kids eat some, and some of them they turn their noses at. They don't like it because it's something they didn't grow up with. But yeah, I do cook some African dishes.
What are your favorite ones?
Well, I just I make chapati, which is actually it's not even. I think it's Indian. It's an Indian food, but see, we had a lot of the Indians from India, so this one was part of their food that they introduced to us, and we like that, and my kids like that too. And you make curry you make to eat with it. Curry is food, like chicken or beef.
Chapati is the name of it.
Yeah.
Do you know how would you spell that?
CH. I have to
I'm
look
going to
it.
spell it like
Yeah.
that. Does that look it?
No.
No.
Yeah, it might be. I'll look. I'll look it up. You might have to Google it or something. And then ugali, which is that's what they ate in Kenya. Ugali. And then usually that's a meal that it's part of it's made out of cornmeal.
Oh.
I make that.
Several kinds of fruit.
Yeah, and then I like mangoes. Fresh mangoes when they're in season. Of course, pineapple and papaya. I eat all those. So I try to eat some of my native foods.
Okay, what do you remember about Miss Angie and when she passed away, and hearing about it, the funeral?
I can't remember anything specific.
Well, I know that everybody was sad, but she hadn't been well, so we knew we were expecting it. But then we had a lot of people come. It was held at our church, and we had a lot of people come, and because the ladies of our church, they always feed the family because most were friends, and she had so many friends.
I remember the church was pretty much full.
Yeah.
Even some in the basement, if I remember.
Yeah.
Just too many.
Overflowing. Yeah. We had a lot of people show.
Have you ever seen a funeral that big?
Oh.
Since then?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
And were your parents involved in the disposition of her estate somehow, as far as the things that were at her house, or what would happen to those after she passed?
Well, Ronnie's mom already had her typewriter and the dictionary at her house. And so after Miss Angie passed, they decided to donate to the OOHRP library because we figured that would be something she'd like to. Since they already took her furniture and over there, we decided that'd be a good place for it. So we took it and donated it over there.
Yeah, we're grateful to have it. People like to see her typewriter.
But yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, and that was when Rodney's mother passed that you all
Hmm.
donated those items.
Yeah.
Okay. Was there, you know how they have estate sales now sometimes when people pass away where they sell things that are in the home? Was there something like that, or were things just given to different
I think
friends?
most of these things that whatever they didn't donate at the OSU, friends and most they took most stuff because she did. I don't remember having that essay sale.
Mm-hmm.
If it did, I probably wish I would win and bought some things, but I don't remember
Mm-hmm.
having that.
Yeah, all of her her library, her books came to OSU,
Yeah,
and
and that's the most.
some of her chairs and
Yeah.
tables.
And I got a friend that has her old stove, but I don't know. I think she already had it. I don't know if she. I don't know how she acquired it, but and she didn't. It's not a. It's one of those antique ones.
Mm-hmm.
So she got it in her home.
Mm-hmm. Those are nice.
Yeah.
When you think of Miss Angie, what words come to your mind?
Let's see. I can't think what I want to say.
Sharp. She was sharp. She knew a lot of history, and she was just, as I remember, she was one of the first ones from Marshall that made it through OSU.
Or OU. She went to OU. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but she ended up
But
teaching.
she taught. Well, yes, and she worked as the maps curator at the
Yeah.
library.
Yeah. I think generous. She was generous. I think every kid that graduated from our church, she gave him something, gift, a graduation gift.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the little book.
Yeah, Prestige book.
I think nearly everybody got a book.
A book?
Yeah.
Yeah. Randy's everybody, and she signed them too.
Yeah.
So that was
a book that she wrote.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So she gave away books that she wrote to students when they graduated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. As you think back to your interactions with her, in what ways did she influence you during those times when she was alive?
I was always impressed with the OSU students that she would have come over and stay. It just, nobody else did that around Marshall, and that really, it was really went over good. There was a lot of families around that end up with an OSU student for a few days or a week, whatever worked out. And I remember when I went to OSU, I run into some guy over there I knew that had been over here. And I best remember everybody wanted me to introduce him to girls.
Oh.
And I can't remember what country he came from now, but I remember that about him.
Well, I think to me she was so good to me, and I learned a lot from her that I just looked up to her. That's all I can say.
Since she's passed away, have you gained any new insight into her and what she did?
Well, no, until we start having those classes, when you put on that. There was more things I learned about her that I didn't know. So that was good too. And we enjoyed those too.
I enjoyed
very
doing
much.
them and meeting you all and the other people too.
Yeah.
And renaming the little bit of highway after her is good too. It's just something you don't see very often with anybody.
How do you think that influenced the community of Marshall to have the international students come and stay with families here?
Well, I think a lot of people learned a lot from foreign students because most people, Marshall, it was a community that didn't have many people, I guess, foreigners or people of color, like probably, running now when he brought me home, I'm probably the first black person that hung around the community and went around, then bringing those foreign students from like Iraq and Pakistan, and that helped the community learn more about people.
Mm-hmm. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When people think of Marshall, Oklahoma today, what should they think of?
Home of our Miss Angie Debo.
I think so.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Connection to Miss Angie's.
When they think of Miss Angie Debo, what should they think of?
The best historian ever lived in the whole United States.
And I rented a farm for a while right over here, a mile north and a mile and a half east. There was a big white house still standing there. And she wrote about that in one of her books, that Will Rogers was working on a ranch over here, and he came over here to a dance one night.
Oh, really? Oh, how interesting.
It's on it. I think it's when I rented that farm, she told me all about it. Yeah, that was the farm that she wrote in that book.
Huh.
And him and his buddy were working on a ranch over there, and after the dance, they spent the night in the barn. They slept in the barn. And the next day, they went to ride horses back over toward Maho, and his buddy, a mule, had ate up one of his boots.
Oh.
And she writes about that. And she talks about some, I can't remember his name, some guy also there, a sheriff guy, was at the dance that night. She mentioned that, but she talks about Will Rogers that night.
Huh.
And I'm thinking, that's the only time you ever heard of Will Rogers coming to Marshall.
So he worked on a ranch near Mulhall?
Yeah.
Yeah, 101 Ranch, I think. Was it?
I think it was something like that.
Huh. Is that house still there?
Yeah.
Is it? Does
Yeah.
somebody live
It's
in
no,
it?
no,
No,
yeah,
no.
you can't get to. It was a beautiful home. I mean, it really, but it just.
The
No,
barn's been fell down for as long as I can remember.
And the house is just nobody. The family didn't stay here to take care of it, and it's just. But it was a 2-story, 3-story or 2-story?
3-story.
3-story house, beautiful
Wow.
home at one time.
Sometimes we can see it from here, but
Oh.
I know you can see it from the pasture down here.
Mm-hmm. I heard that her brother built a house after he married, and then you all donated the wooden sign that was from her house.
Yeah, that girl that lives there found it
Mm-hmm.
and gave it to.
And the pictures, and
Mhm.
the 2 pictures, and we appreciate
Yeah.
getting those too. So I guess her brother was a builder.
Evidently.
And I don't think he lived too long, did he?
No, he
I
didn't.
didn't
No.
think so.
No, he's buried up down in the cemetery.
Yeah,
He died young. It's sad.
yeah.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you that about yourselves that you would like to share?
No, I think we covered it.
Okay. Is there anything about Miss Angie that I haven't asked that when you think of her that comes to your mind that you would like to share?
No, not this.
I think she was well honored in the community. When we had the Prairie City Days things on Main Street, she always was put in charge to lead the
To be
parade
in the
and
vehicle and
that just seemed to be really impressed in town. She was in the community.
Mm-hmm. So her presence in the community was very strong then. She was a historian. She she had a whole aspect to her that had to do with all of her amazing research and her writing and her books. But then she had this other side of her that was an honored community member.
Yeah, most of the time, really, when we go together, like at the church or at the meetings that we had, she was just a nice person. You know, we didn't see her as a historian, but we saw her as a friend and a church member, and so that's what's good about it.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything else about Marshall, Oklahoma that you would like to share?
Well, only thing I thought of is when we lived on this farm out west of Marshall, 2 miles, that creek down there, we had a spring that never dried. And there was one year when everything dried. It was real dry year. But that spring did dry. That spring, and she told me, said she'd ride her horse to school, and she always stopped there and water her horse at that spring.
Huh.
But she brought that up when she found out we lived there.
Oh, is it still there? That spring?
We don't know.
I bet it is. I don't know. We don't rent that farm anymore.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't rented it for a long time.
About 2 miles west of here?
Yeah.
Was it
west of Marshall.
West of Marshall.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
From there, she went,
from her home.
From her home.
Oh.
And then went, stopped there. It's about 2 miles. Is that 2 miles? Yeah, 2 miles from 51 going north.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good memory.
Yeah.
Little girl riding her horse to school.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think I thank you very much for the interview today and the information that you shared. Really enjoyed hearing about your own lives and then your memories of Miss Angie, and then also about your community here too.
Yeah, this community is a good community. It's just we don't have all the people, the old elderly in our church have all pretty well gone now. I think we'll go one more lady still alive now that was one of the original church members, but the rest everybody's gone. Luella, I think, was the last one that moved away. That's now this one lady still lives in town by herself. I think she's 86.
What is her name?
Doris Rudd.
Doris Rudd.
That's the only one that's went to our church and still in the community, but we've lost everybody.
Is there anyone around that you think knew Miss Angie that I should maybe get in touch with and see about interviewing?
What's the girl's name? She came in the station the other day. She worked at the hospital up there. Bookkeeper. Wasn't she a bookkeeper?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. She's older than me.
But if I think of somebody, I'll let you know.
Okay.
But like some of them that really knew her real well are gone.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much again. I appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome.
She lived up on the north side of town. Her husband died not terrible long ago. She got a rock, a wooden thing at the tree kind of thing they carved up with wood. It's a chainsaw.
Well, I can't. Right now, I can't think who he's talking about. Anyway, if I think of it,
You can let me know.
I will.
Okay.